Chavarria. Jennifer Chavarria. No, I'm going to get it right. Jennifer Chavarria, head of studio, Kite and Lightning. Yes. Jenna Seiden, head of content at Vive. Denny Unger, CEO of Cloudhead Games. God. See, I'm not reading. I just know this stuff. And John Coleman, director of business development at Vertigo Games. So we're going to talk about unlocking ways to distribute and monetize VR games and content. So maybe before we unlock them, we should maybe just sort of set out a little bit of a tableau of the state of the market, of how people, let's talk about monetizing first, right? How people are paying for content. And I guess I'll start with Jenna. You've got a whole store. So you have all sorts of choice. So maybe if you could sort of talk to people inside the Viveport, what are the different ways that people are buying content?
No problem. So I oversee content strategy for Viveport specifically on behalf of HTC Vive. And Viveport is an apps and games store available globally. We launched it about a year and 2 months ago globally. It was launched a few months before that in China. And it's a basic transactional store just like Steam. So you can price your content and you get your agency model of 70% on the dollar basically. You can also distribute your free content. So just like any other storefront, from the Oculus store to Steam, you have that sort of TVOD, or as Ryan came up with a new term, TVROD model, which was nice. But we also launched something about 4 months ago as well for people who are sort of new to the space, who aren't able to they don't know raw data from Fruit Ninja, from this piece or that piece. And then there are folks who have made some purchases and have some extra money and they're not sure what to test. So we have a subscription model that we launched. And what that means is a consumer can pay X dollars a month, and right now it's priced at $7 a month, and they get to rent 5 titles a month. Okay. So we've seen that subscription model as a great way to sort of lead people into the transactional store, which is great. So we have a subscription model, a regular transactional store like Steam. We're non-exclusive. And then we have arcade distribution as well, so consumers can come in all those locations to buy and access content based on time or downloadable.
Let me just unpack a little bit. So the 5, like the Cake of the Month Club version of that. Do you curate the 5, or do I get 5 that I just click on 5 I want?
There's a lot of discussion and thought that went into that. And some of us said, hey, we're going to curate for you because we're going to be your tastemakers. Sure. I lost that battle. So that's not what happened, actually. And not saying what we are doing is better or worse. It's just we had to try something, and that's what we did. So instead of us telling you what those 5 are, you have a library of over 300 titles, and you get to choose those 5.
Really?
So it's just a question of, do I want to give you choice, or do I want to tell you what choice to make? I was wanting to tell you what to do, but I lost. So again, yes, you get to choose 5 titles, and you can rent those again the next month, or choose 5 new titles, which is great.
Super interesting, and I'll bring everyone in, but I'm just curious about like what a title. Okay, so a title. So you were saying like the Steam store, right? But it's not like the Steam store exactly, because the Steam store historically sells games.
Correct.
Right, and with games, there's like an expectation born of 40 years or 50, however long there've been video games, of like what you're getting when you buy a game on Steam, and there's pricing that's appropriate, and you go, I get my 100 hours or whatever, give me 60, right? How do you, I guess, set the expectations of what a customer, a VRer, will get when they get 5 titles, which could be anything from a transitory experience to a repeatable game, like everything in between. Like, how are you sort of building that lingua franca of, this is fair, what a great deal, like I didn't click on the wrong 5 things, because you would have made it perfect.
Of course.
Right? But these people self-curating can just click on anything because they don't know yet. They just got a Vive.
It's a combination of the responsibility of those of you in the audience creating great content, and we leave it up to you to make what you want to make. Yes. And we hope it's replayable, and we hope there's a reason that when someone does choose your title from our selection, that they either go, wow, I really want this permanently in my library, or I've tried it and it wasn't satisfactory enough, or it was great. And so we distinguish ourselves very quickly so other people can talk. Sure. And there are some nuances, and those of you whom I know, I have to explain this often. The global Viveport store predominantly offers non-gaming interactive content.
Okay.
Steam is excellent. Steam's been around for not 50 years. I don't think anyone there wants to say they've been around 50 years, but they've got a great audience focused on gamers, and so they handle, as of right now, a fantastic selection of what we would all determine to be traditional games. We have gamified content, we have interactive content, but they are either very story-driven, like what Denny's studio makes, or they are productivity, utility, other tilt brush, things like that. So we only distribute non-gaming apps through our global store.
Yes.
And then in the Viveport subscription model, sort of a workaround, but because it's a different business model, it's not exactly head-to-head with Steam in terms of the business model, we offer any paid title that wants to opt in and be part of that program.
Sure, well, then I'll bring everyone in. I'll go. So you're all creating content and experiences, games. How do you, for a new world, how do you communicate, I guess, both the aesthetics and I guess sort of the expectation of playtime and of mechanics to people who may be having their first VR experience with what you've created? Like, what are the sort of the, I guess, the keywords or the language or even the methodology of being like, trust me, put it on, but no, wait, first buy. Good job. Now put this headset on, and being like, and we're gonna meet you where we promised you before you click to buy. Like, how are you navigating? I'll start with you. Like, how are you communicating, what you're doing, why you're doing it to these new people?
Absolutely. So something our studio a couple years back had produced and generated and did not charge for the experience. And this was to prove, I think, value, our value system, that we invite people into these worlds through very rich art. It was called Senza Peso. It was a VR Italian opera. And you basically went on a journey in a gondola ride. You stepped into this boat and you ascended into immortality.
Ooh.
It was thought-provoking.
What platform? Just so I can.
Oh, it was Steam.
Oh,
So
okay.
Steam, yeah.
Okay, got it.
Exactly, Steam. And that was where we had distributed. It was also on Oculus. And then we're still, because we are a very small developer,
Yep.
we're also going to probably be re-releasing it with some new additives, just because people have watched that experience over and over again. Sure. And it's been something that we felt was important as a first step to prove that you can trust us, that we are going to produce value here. This is a short, come in, and this is what you will see from us and our studio going forward.
Okay. How did you communicate that outside, I guess, before you got
Yep.
in? Like in, what I'm saying, like the line to the ride.
I'm sorry.
So, okay, so obviously when you went in for the gondola ride, amazing.
Right.
But before I went in for the gondola ride, I don't know, watch a YouTube video or hear some text, I had to
Yes.
read some poetry, something had to happen to
Yes.
make that transaction happen.
There was a lot of sort of different versions, regular 2D on YouTube, things of that nature, in which it was released first. And a lot of people gravitated because it had very, very strong musical composition. It was absolutely gorgeous and a feast for the eyes. So then when we released it in VR, people said, wow, I'm going to get to step in now to the experience. So that was something that was, I think for us, very important to do as a studio, as a step, and that was something that the two co-founders, who are just absolutely incredible, Corey Strasberger and Akrima El Hassan, both of them are just phenomenally creative and a fantastic dynamic duo in so many ways. So going now into our next IP, and something that we are doing is we've gone a completely opposite direction and we're playing into a different set of emotions. So for us, I think what you're going to find is that, and this is where I think for us it was keeping a value system. And now we're going to go, we realize that, okay, in virtual reality, we need to have some interactivity. We need to have a couple different layers and variety for people to enjoy. Obviously, how are we going to make this sticky? How are we going to keep you coming back? And what are we trying to do with characters and narrative? And we're known in our studio for social, gaming, and storytelling. So we're now working on a gaming IP called Babylon Battle Royale, which consists of immortal babies battling for world domination. In a game environment.
Yes.
So, but the reason why I say this, this is so polar opposite, and a lot of people say, well, how are you going from this to this? Italian opera, ascension, immortality, to now wacky babies, showboating, taunting, and completely just let your inner wild child run wild. Well, the through line, if you look at it, it's emotion. We're playing on emotion. Okay. We're promising value, and we're tapping into laughter, self-expression, while you play the game in a combat style setting. There's spectating, all of these things. So these things are very important to keep the emotional through line and let people always experience a very, very content-rich creative environment that you can enjoy in VR, but also now, what's the emotion and what's the journey we're gonna take you on?
Right on. Well, so there. I get it, like get your baby Pixar on, I get it. So same question to you, like same thing. People have to trust you, give you their time, and hopefully their money before the headset goes on. How are you communicating?
Can you ask a harder question? So the value proposition to new users is really a difficult question. The thing that's made it more clear for us and for the customer base has been time. People come into VR with expectations on what it is and have a very different exit experience of what it actually is. And so they go in and they might buy some shooters or something that's a quick pick up and play experience, but those experiences haven't really fully taken advantage of the medium. And I think the last year or more has expressed to the consumer base what is a good VR experience and what isn't. I think the community is starting to understand the differences. It's taking a while though, because we're also finding the language for what makes a good VR experience. So in our case, it's a highly narrative, story-driven kind of experience. It's puzzle solving. We've had 2 episodes out, and it's really the thrust of the community that's played it, giving good reviews, giving good user feedback, and then the press as well, picking up on that has kind of turned the tide from. A lot of people may have looked at our first titles, Call of the Starseed or Heart of the Emberstone, and thought, well, it's a puzzle game, I'm not really interested. But it's not a game in that it's its own thing, and it's taken this much time to really get those ideas across to the consuming public. Yeah.
Same question.
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, it's been more about can you show people what the content is more than the words that you use. It's so hard to communicate in text what a VR experience is. So obviously, standard video, trailers, influencers has been helpful. But when we get to, our first game is Arizona Sunshine, which is a shooter. It's obviously easier to communicate. Things blow up.
It's got a story.
Yeah, it does. But it's easier for a gamer to understand because it's pretty straightforward mechanic. Our second game, Skyworld, is a VR strategy game. And there we've gone down the road of creating tutorial videos, doing streams around that. We've actually released a demo as well to try to give people the opportunity to jump in, try it, and see if this is something you want to continue to play. The challenge with it too is that you want to do it in a way that you're giving them enough content, but you don't give away everything, right? Sure. Which is, I know for a lot of VR developers is more challenging because we're still talking about the length of the game. How long is it? Is it something that has room to do a demo, and then when someone pays the money to get it, they get 10x more or more than what they were able to do in the demo.
Speaking just to the demo thing really quick, we're experimenting with bringing back the demo. And so there's a lot of statistical data that says that demos kind of kill buying models. Like that's why the PC market abandoned the demo model. We're experimenting with it again, and we're going to release a demo for Heart of the Emberstone because it's so hard to share the experience with users. They have no idea what they're getting into. They can't see it on a flat screen. It doesn't translate at all. And maybe it'll fail. Maybe we'll still have the same issues that the PC space did in terms of relaying what the experience is, and they just won't buy it after that. But I feel that VR is such a substantially different medium that you have to openly, freely share a certain segment of your experience so that people get it and can buy in.
Gotcha, sample, okay. So, all right, so yeah, narrative journey. So discovery, right? Experience, identity, once you've been in, you get it, and then sharing. We're sort of talking a lot about. How are you, so that you can monetize, okay? So the market has to grow. We're gonna get more Vives, more everywhere. And so that means a lot of the people who are coming into your world are going to be new again, okay? They just got it, shiny, plugging it in, went to Vive, right? Went to Viveport, got to you. But you've now grown your first generation, your most loyal people who already cried on the gondola, right? people, Arizona Sunshine, like me, I see it on the top of the charts like every time I turn my computer on, top of the charts, right? You already got me, right? And so I have a different set of expectations about your next game. When you go,
Right.
oh, it's a strategy VR game, and I look at you like, I want to kill more stuff. But that's okay. Like, how are you cultivating your communities, right? Which are offline, like sort of, they're off VR line, right? They aren't exactly they aren't on the gondola talking to each other saying, let's go on the next ride. They're like on Steam or they're on your website. Like, what are you having to do to cultivate this new generation of VR people who have this VR experience in common, which is different than a historical flat game experience?
I think one of the things that we're really emphasizing is opening up on our first launch coming up for our new IP, the Babylon games, is you're going to be in an arena environment. There's spectating, obviously. And I think one of the most interesting aspects that we're focusing on for that is to have interactive spectating. So meaning that if you are there watching this environment, you're actually able to affect gameplay by you can purchase an item, let's say, and you're going to throw a bomb into the arena and affect gameplay. So there's certain things of that nature which we're exploring mobile integration.
Sure.
Which would be very helpful as far as the financial aspect of things. And also building community and conversation.
Yeah.
Because it's important, like when you go into these environments, the bottom line is we're all people and we all want to share it together. So you have to have some form of that interaction, even if you're not in the immediate gameplay. How are we as a community sharing that experience together?
That brings it back to Viveport, right? So like in the Steam store, right? When I go to the Steam store, the first thing I look at is who else has the game, right? Who else has Arizona Sunshine? Because I don't feel like alone. I'm like, ooh, 8 other people have it, or 4 others are playing it, and one's playing it right now. Blah, right? You're giving birth to a new community right now, and so you have an opportunity to do it however you want. Like, how are you thinking about that? Like, sort of cultivating the Viveport experience, right? To monetize them when the helmet's off. You know what I'm saying? Like, to be in Viveport, but helmet off.
I think we have the responsibility as a platform to help these guys either decide if they should be, adding new content and features to their existing content and decide if the opportunity cost is worth it for that, or to invest in new IP and roll out. Again, it depends on the size of the studio and whatnot. So for us, we grow the community by supporting the creator community, first and foremost. Now, mind you, our roadmap for Viveport itself in terms of the traditional gamer tag and multiplayer and achievements and leaderboards and seeing who owns things, that's all on our roadmap. Some things have already been launched, some are growing. What's the connectivity between, if I have such and such title at home that I've purchased, can I go into an arcade and log in and see where my progress ended and starts again? Building SDKs so that the tools are there so that these guys can also tie things into their cloud services and all of those things. So for us, our responsibility is to be able to provide the data, provide the different channels for them to distribute, and even when their title becomes maybe more of a legacy title, doesn't mean less popular, but maybe they put that into one of our channels and window it. Ryan brought up the notion of windowing as well, which is, to those of us who are Hollywood survivors, are very familiar with that strategy. I think that's newer for people in VR because you're like, oh, it's just a transactional store, be it Steam or Viveport or whatever. But now we've got other places. Do we want to do a demo in the retail stores? We have partnerships with GameStops. Do we try that first and then see how that reaction is and either take that elsewhere or whatnot? So for us, it's the channels and the data that I think that helps them make the decision on what they should do.
Yeah, how do you creators think about the narrative journey of VR people? VR, what do we call people who VR? Those who VR.
VR geeks.
VR geeks?
Yeah.
Love it, VR geeks. VR geeks. We can own that. Trademark. As they navigate between your different experiences, right? At the end of the day, you want everyone to be VR geeking. And whether it be in your particular universe, right, that's great, but ultimately you want them to sort of hop about. I think of it like, remember when mobile games had the ads for other mobile games? Right, just to keep you playing mobile games, and then it sort of went away, because like, why are you taking my customer, right? But right now, you're just trying to raise the tide for everyone. Like, it's good news if they're playing Arizona, it's good news if they're it's all good news. How do you actively cultivate that so that you don't just have like the biggest of the tiny pot? You know what I mean? Like we've got 7 people and you've only got 4. Like, you know what I mean? How do you?
I think curation is incredibly important, and it's not paid attention to enough in the industry because the industry is so small right now, because the consumer base is so small comparatively to other industries. So I would have went to bat with you on let's focus on top tier experiences for the first time a user engages in VR content. That should be top of mind to any VR manufacturer right now. And by doing that, you're creating its own regenerative cycle because they've had that amazing first top tier experience, and they're not going to walk away thinking it's a gimmick. And I say this because consumers walk into a Best Buy and they see an aisle full of cardboard-esque devices and they think that's VR. And they have that first experience and it's a gimmick. They do it once and go, oh, that was cool, and throw it in the drawer and that collects dust. What they're not getting is this upper tier of VR experience. And so to me, it's incredibly important that the consumer gets a high-end hardware experience and a high-end software experience as their first experience because it's so critical to them remaining in the market.
Super cool.
Well, that's why we bundled the gallery
and
with our hardware. I mean, we wanted to find the premium experiences with a premium piece of hardware, and to Denny's point, that's exactly it. So we curate those titles depending on the premium placement of the storefront, our hardware, our promotion. So he's 1000% correct.
It's super important. Like, so yes, you have a store. You have this responsibility, opportunity, challenge, opportunity, right, to give that first experience. Like I know, for example, I mean, I love all your stuff. When I take someone to show them VR, I put them in tilt brush, right? Because no one's bad at tilt brush. They go the thing, and then you go, look, duck, and they go, what? And then
or it's
they'll try some more VR.
Yeah.
But what sorts of things do you think should be being created for these first experience? Like we're distributing, to distribute VR, right? People have to have that good experience. What should we be distributing to people first? Like what should be, you turn on the VR, you jump in the Viveport, you know?
Well, I mean, one of the things you're seeing, the Oculus has started doing on their store is curated bundles, which are everything from you know, here's these 3 titles and you're going to get all of them too. They've got some dynamic pricing now where if you've got one, but you want the other 3, then a 4-game bundle, you can do that. And I think that's been good because it brings, particularly if you have one of the games in the bundle, it helps sort of identify like this is the same kind of quality, you want to go across and try that. And I think that's been successful, relatively new, but successful what they've done. And you know, then I think the other is cross-pollinating communities. Survios has a program that they've done with a number of different developers that we did as well, where it's sort of the Free Key Friday, where the 2 communities play each other's games and
Awesome.
try to get the highest score. And if you can beat the devs playing their game, then you get a free key to the other game. So things like that. With our own games, we've got different newsletter mailing lists and trying to cross promo and sort of basic marketing stuff. But I think if you've got a community that's engaged with content, trying to move them across to other things that you would consider high quality, just helps the ecosystem.
Sure. How about bridging? I think you started talking about bridging between location-based experiences and home, right? Because we're all one big VR family, ultimately. And it's sort of like if the arcade and the Super Nintendo had appeared at the same exact time, like in time and space, right? Where there were 2 different ways to have not exactly the same experience, but they're overlapping cousins, right? What opportunities are there for people to feel a part, to feel engaged, for repeat experiences between location-based and home VR?
I think when Ben earlier gave his presentation, he talked about sort of the percentage of total people who have used or experienced their titles. And he said, I believe, and I apologize if I'm misquoting, but about 80% of them came through location-based. We believe that location-based is where most people are going to encounter VR or in retail, but mostly location-based from a commercial standpoint. And that's a different audience, and it's a social experience. And that's why single-player games are great, but we're looking for more multiplayer co-op games, or as Jennifer mentioned, how do you have a second screen experience and participate? So for us, yes, we'd love to see some correlation between I tried such and such and went to Viveport or to Steam or Oculus. We don't care. We got to grow the industry, and it's weird for me to say we don't care, but we need to grow the industry and say I'm not exclusive. I want them to go to as many places to get the best content. So we haven't seen a direct correlation, but we're hoping that they want to go home and buy things. We've had arcade operators talk to us about how can we sell hardware on site. So we're building affiliate programs and things of that nature, which is fantastic that we're likely to roll out soon. You know, like I said, hopefully there's some, user profiles that'll link as well. But you have to remember, North America, Europe, even South America are very different than Asia, where the culture is used to going out to internet cafes and location-based location-based, that makes a lot of sense. Going out of their home because of whatever their square footage of their house, or that's just what they do. So for us to come back in the cyclical nature of let's bring arcades back, it's just a different cultural thing here too. So we have to create those environments and bring them the content, or even movie theaters, where, you know, what's the downtime in my movie theaters and peak hours, and do I bring kids in? You saw them do that with esports. Let's do that with VR. Maybe it's more cinematic based and not zombie shooters or things of that nature. So, you know, we're doing our best to make sure that we help get that content out to any of those different location-based locations.
There's one other thing that we've started to do that's, it talks about bringing community, you know, how do you communicate stuff, but also how to think about location-based versus at home. And there's no direct correlation to this. It's a pure promotional message amplification, but we did a free beta night of Skyworld and with all of our arcade partners where, you know, we didn't charge them anything. And, you know, if they wanted to charge their customers, they could. But the idea was everybody gets early access to it, and you see a bump in social activity and you know, messaging around your game as a good promotional piece as well. How to build a community around.
No, I was thinking for me, like location-based, like VRLA was location-based entertainment for me. Like before I had a system, right? That's where like you saw all the stuff. Even like here, if you go see stuff in the exhibit hall, right? You can sort of take it home. That's so. Right.
What's important about location-based, just as much as it is for the home market, is that they're getting curated quality experiences, because it's just as easy to have a bad location-based experience and go, oh, this was a crap experience, and I'm not going to do that again. So it's important, and the difficulty there is that that segment is expanding so rapidly, and there's really no filter. It's just they're throwing a bunch of stuff. The money's being thrown everywhere at LBEs, with very little kind of regard to what is a quality LBE experience and what isn't, right?
Yeah.
Right. Like, what's apples to apples? If I go, to this arcade versus this arcade, and you sort of knew what an arcade was intuitively.
Yeah.
But yeah, for an LBE. It's not
But again,
necessarily.
people are going and usually paying based on time, so that you don't have the luxury of a long tutorial that you can do at home. So what we're trying to do is put together sort of best practices, and even if they're at the highest level, I'm not a game designer, I've been in games for a long time, but I can tell you, shorter tutorials, make sure your menus are at such and such, and it's important, and it's a different SKU. You want to get throughput. It's different, and so we try to help advise on that side of things. It really is important to have a different understanding of who that consumer is and why they're going there for that, so that the content is good. I have 700 plus titles that have signed up for my arcade distribution platform. No disrespect, 10% are probably ready for prime time, if you will. So we're taking that 700 plus list, all these people who've raised their hands said, hey, please pick me, pick me. We're actually curating and telling operators, like, here's our staff picks, or here's the startup pack. We recommend this. You know, definitely, it's Arizona Sunshine. It's such and such. And it's important because we need to tell these operators who are transitioning from stand-up arcade coin-ops to, they don't know.
Well, they need to trust you,
Hopefully.
right? And you earn that trust with great experiences. What about, so monetizing people, right? You have to have a touch point. So there's the touch point of like buying the game. Where do you find your audience spending most of their time, once again, like outside of that touch point where you could monetize them? Like, are they off on Discord talking? Are they on your website? Like, where are they where you could potentially, I don't know, sell them a t-shirt, I don't know, monetize them anyway, in any way, shape, or form other than the transaction itself for this new VR generation?
I mean, for us, we're building into our game certain aspects. The fashion is very important to these babies, these immortal babies.
Of course.
Okay, so but with that,
Everyone wants this game. Tell us again slowly what the name of this game is, because who's not going to want to be an immortal baby like Head?
Babylon Battle Royale.
Babylon.
Babylon. Yes.
Spell that.
Bebylon.
Babylon.
Yes.
Gotcha. Battle Royale.
In
Done.
the world of
Sold.
Babylon.
Done. Okay, back to you were saying. Sorry.
Yes, but I mean, one of the things that we're being very conscious of as we're developing this world, and we're kind of going in phases, right? You've got your regular gameplay phase, and we're moving into the spectating aspect, and then we're going more into open world. So there's going to be a lot of places to visit, things to do, shopping mall inside of this fantastical world.
Sure.
The fashion is important, as I mentioned. And one of the things that we are trying to do is match merchandise that's going to reflect the style of the families that develop in here, different personal style. How can you customize, finding crazy outfits, and people going and self-expressing as much as they would like, and actually finding a way to capitalize on that with merchandise as well. So creating, something that they can
merchandise
purchase.
where? Like, do you mean virtual merchandise that I buy in a
No.
virtual store, or you mean real stuff?
You can there as well.
Okay.
But we will also create it where you can purchase certain shirts that you can wear.
Got it. No, I love T-shirts. Same question to you. Like, where are you touching on your audience sort of outside of the helmet?
The existing base,
The
the VR enthusiasts.
You're a VR enthusiast, yes.
It's really tough. It depends on your game. I mean, whether or not you have microtransactions, like she's saying. There's different touch points where you could engage the audience, but the audience is still at a pretty fragile total user base, right?
Okay.
So I think that those models will work over the next couple of years, but right now it's a bit tenuous about how much you can push consumers. We're already charging a premium for per minute gameplay because the market size is what it is, and to do like a high quality production, it costs X amount of dollars. We can't artificially lower our price point for our product like we could in the normal PC market. Like we can't charge $10 because we know we have X amount of users. So you have to be really careful about how you implement those strategies, I think. So I don't know if I have a good answer for that. Maybe.
No, it's happening now. That's why we're talking about, we're unlocking still. It's locked. Some things are still locked. Well, I'm going to ask a sort of more of a question that goes on this line. So some things that I've not experienced yet in VR, but coming soon, gambling, loot boxes, which is another form of gambling, right? And I guess I'm curious sort of how you feel, like, because, I mean, you could be like, well, people make money how they want to make money, or you could be like, it's bad for everyone if we go down this path that we have not gone down yet. How do you feel about, I guess, different models, which are maybe more tied to, being addictive figuratively versus addictive like spiritually, like I love Zelda, I'll never stop playing it, versus I really need to play some Zelda. Right? How do you feel that the place for that in VR?
As soon as there's a comparable metaverse in VR, as soon as you have a social shared experience that lets you jump into different experiences together socially, and you can dress up like you want to dress up, and there's suddenly a model for charging for clothing and accessories and whatever, right?
Yes.
And once that thing is supported, you're going to have this tipping point of consumers jumping into that, and suddenly you have the market to sell that stuff too. So I don't know.
I mean more of intent. I'm talking about the intent of different monetization techniques.
I think that there's a portion that's necessary, obviously, for survival.
Sure.
But I also feel that as long as you haven't lost the authenticity of the content that you're creating to your consumer, to your fans, to your people that value what you're creating. So I think you have to first always be authentic, produce good content. Don't just start purchasing everything and go wild with it. Now, some gamers say they love that. They're addicted to the rush and the low, right? Yeah. So I'm kind of like in the middle, and just making sure that you protect the content first, and then if there's some sort of monetization, as long as that's not the focus.
I'll give you an example, and maybe I'm pushing this point because I'm super curious about it. The same way we all agreed not to let them get sick. Remember, like everyone sort of reached a consensus as a community, like, hey, the dizzy thing, let's not do that. Let's get our best practices in order. You could certainly consider a world where we might think, oh my gosh, there could be ethics. There could be best financial practices.
There won't be any ethics. What are you talking about?
Well, there could be, right?
Well, they're in
around-
real life or in Bellamy?
No, but in
Not when
VR,
you're-
like
no.
people are trusting you to transport them to a different place, right? And then they're trusting you. So it is sort of incumbent upon you to repay that trust on some level or not, right? But I mean, are these things you think about?
There are platform legalities and things
Yes.
that we, as a company, we look at things from a commercial, from an ethics, from a strategic standpoint, and obviously there are pieces of content that are integrating cryptocurrencies, and there's obviously a ton of, I get pitches all the time about, hey, we've got a partnership with this casino, and we're going to do some type of gambling-based initiative, or what about esports and gambling? So this all exists. We know it exists. So the question is just for us, it's all of those things have to be evaluated if we want to be there. And right now we're still just, standard, use your PayPal, use your credit card and purchase. And we're evaluating all of these things. But again, we're a Taiwanese company. And we look at things globally.
Yeah.
We look at things in China. And so it would be negligent for us not to look at that. But right now, gambling is a serious issue. When you do a contest, even for Vive, there are rules in every state and how you have to apply. So that alone, and that's contests and sweepstakes exist for every industry. So for us to jump into the gambling and feeding that need, we're going to take that very seriously.
Are there any rules that are, is it just like PC games, or is it just like movies as far as the rules that govern experiences in VR? Right, like I think of there being laws, like right, in certain states you can show a movie, you can't show this. Certain countries you can show this, you can't show that. Versus the rules for play, versus the rules for gambling, or all these sorts of things. Like, are there things which are unique to VR? Like, are there VR laws anywhere?
No,
right now?
there's I think it's the ITA. Is that what they're called? There's different groups trying to create standards.
Okay.
But that's a really tricky business. Like,
Yeah.
We're not even
I might
governed
not
by
agree with your
ESRB.
standards.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and some of that is really limiting in terms of how they're presenting it. So I don't know. It's the Wild West. It's the internet, right? It's black and white. It's good and bad. It's all those things, and people are going to exploit it and not exploit it. And
Well, what's an unexpected business model that you've seen? Like, what's something you've seen, Jenna, that you can share that you're like, oh, that's new. Like, that's a new way of monetizing.
I don't think anything's new. I just think I think we're trying to apply best practices from other industries and see how that works for ours. I think I haven't seen anything new other than, we've seen what's been successful for us as of late, and we've seen once we launch our subscription service, that's actually been gaining on the transactional business. And because we're seeing that we were the first to launch a true subscription business. There have been apps that have their own subscription to it, but that's bringing people in, and it's lowering the barrier to a very intimidating space for a lot of people. So I just say it's just how you market it, how you approach people. I mean, I'd love to find something completely new, but I just think it's just someone who does it right and hits that right spot. I haven't seen that quite yet, but
What are some
maybe I'm
innovative ways
missing
that
something.
games are being distributed across VR? Or is it just like PC games? Like, are there things people are doing that are new and unique to distribute?
The one thing I'll add last here is we should think beyond games as well.
Sure, I'm sorry, experiences.
Well, no, but because it's important. You think of, we have a huge arts commitment that we just announced, right? And we're doing stuff in museums. And so we're looking at these activations that are happening from the Tate. We did a Modigliani piece at the Tate. We do a lot with the Nobel Museum and stuff. And so
Just so people can know, is that like bringing the museum to life? Is that, or is it something?
No, no. These are artists who are either creating original native pieces and expressing themselves using Unity or Unreal and creating a piece. Some are, yes, I'm scanning such and such art for an experience and stuff like that. And so I think we also need to look at, not always just assume it's games as well, and just look at how those models are, driving the community as well, and
So let's drill in. So
Okay.
art community
Yeah.
being served by new forms of art that are being created or scanned. How are you reaching out and going from, hey, you're a museum goer, you're a likely art right? Art geek, an art geek, right? And now I want you to experience this in VR.
Have you been to a museum? I'm kidding, art geek.
Well, you know what I'm saying though, right? Like, how
I
are
do.
you reaching out and getting these people to go from, I have my own narrative journey, which is I go to museums, I hang out with my art friends, right? I consume art in these ways, to experience art in this new medium.
You have to be able to market to that audience. You're not going to market the same way to a gamer that you are to possibly an older demographic. And you think people who do who are patrons of certain museums, in LA, the Norton Simon Museum and all these things, and in Pasadena. But these people want different types of experiences to jump in early. Do they want to be burdened with a huge tutorial menu? Absolutely not. They're not looking for gamification. They just want to jump and experience it. But they do have that discretionary income to go purchase a Vive or any other headsets or things of that nature. So, it's just about marketing to that audience and telling the right story to them.
Is it like in the museum? Like, it's like, people wait in line to go to the Broad, right? And they do
Yeah.
fun things at the Broad. It's like then, but like you go and do the VR. Like, is it that sort of thing?
It's
Is it like
combination.
is it? Okay.
It's so like it's an original exhibit. Like there's a section of a museum sometimes where it's just another sort of exhibition, and you go in and do this. Sometimes it is in the gift shop, and you get to see the items of the museum there, or it's at a home experience, and I'm going through a museum. But it's just that's the hardest part is marketing to this new audience, but we need to bring them in.
Engagement per platform is something we're starting to see. So, you've got Viveport, Oculus has Oculus Home, and then Steam VR. All of those ecosystems are kind of bubbling up to be more social, more inclusive, and sharing experiences, sharing small experiences together, selecting experiences together in a more social way. Everybody's leading to the same kind of answer, which is once you crack that code and get consumers in a shared social space, that kind of changes the market completely. And that's how you keep engagement up higher than it currently is, I think.
Gotcha. Are there a lot of good social experiences outside of games? I play like Rec Room, right? Like what sort of things are, for unexpected, for non-games, far away from games, what sort of social things are people doing in VR?
Well, you saw there is alt space, and so you can have events, and people can come together and cover the Olympics, do big news events. We just became a big investor in VR Chat. We announced that.
Oh, right.
And so those are shared experiences. Sansar launched, and Sansar has an amazing platform as well, where you can build your own ecosystems in there as well. I mean, I think there's going to be a layer, whether it's Oculus or us, that has SDKs that allow for that shared experience across these apps or on these platforms. But there are a ton of social experiences, especially like you look at the Wave VR, something that you know very well, right? You have appointment programming every Thursday night, and people all join in and get to experience a beautiful sort of music.
Yeah. You can come anytime.
You can anytime, but then you have those appointment
Yes.
programming nights and stuff like that. So yeah, social is going to be huge. And I mean, you're going to want to put these headsets on, not just for these aspirational entertainment experiences, but you want to use it every day. I want to talk to my family and watch a movie together, or travel somewhere together, or I don't have kids, but I want my nieces and nephews, I want them to understand and learn about the Civil War together, and you're seeing this in schools. You need social for schools. I mean, people have to interact together, so that's fundamental to build in social.
And you want a natural gestural communication method with those people, so you feel like you're sharing actual physical space. Yeah.
Do you think there'll be like a post, like remember Home? Remember PlayStation? And the intent, right, was it was going to be like this place where you came together socially and then sort of went off to your experiences?
Yeah.
Do you think there'll be like and I won't even go down that particular vector, but like your own original new vectors like that, where people sort of aggregate because they enjoy virtual experiences and then, navigate creatively into your experiences? Like, is that something that you hope to hook into? I mean,
I think that those kind of things are going to happen. What it looks like and how you do it is an open question. Obviously with Facebook Spaces and what they're trying to do, that's sort of the most obvious push in that direction in terms of major push. But I think ultimately for it to really work, it becomes a place of personal expression. And so, if you're looking for potential opportunities to monetize in interesting ways, you've got as people are personalizing those spaces. But that, it's probably a little ways down the road. But I think that is going to happen.
Open up to questions. Questions? Round. Maybe there's no questions. Any questions? There's a question. See you.
Nicole Lazaro from Z Design and Follow Wet Rabbit. I was curious, are we going to see sort of a race to the bottom like we saw in Apple and iOS, where prices were just going below what it would be possible to sustain a studio with? Free to play is awesome. You get massive markets, but then the addiction mechanics you talked about, Gordon, come from the you have to have this psychological hook to get people to come back to spend that 2 cents or $2 on a power up.
So the race. Do you fear the race to the bottom?
I think the easy answer there is that it's not sustainable in VR. The race to the bottom just won't work. The whole platform will die. Because of the way the curve is working, that's not how it's going to play out, in my opinion.
How soon? Actually, just tell me if this exists. I feel like they're not in-app purchases in VR. Like I've never
Yeah, they
actually
are.
done. Okay, so now, right now today, I could be clicking, buying things.
Just like there is Rock Band and you can purchase different songs, you can do the same thing in VR. We're tracking those. People got to pay royalties to those publishers, or there are different downloads of dinosaurs and museum apps, and they want to see what's doing well. I mean, I come from, one of my most recent experiences is working at Maker Studios, where we oversaw 55,000 YouTubers, and Google is amazing with how granular their data is. And me and others are trying to do the same thing and be able to provide everything from in-app purchases to DLC to just knowing when someone's tuning out during your experience, and it's great. So in-app purchases are going to be a huge piece of this whole puzzle. Yeah.
YouTubers, okay, yes, VTubers. That's what we haven't talked about at all. What about people
Sorry.
No, who persist as live entities in your virtual worlds, around your worlds, right? Who offer services that they monetize. That seems like that would be a huge thing, right? Like people that you knew were there in and around your games, creating content or providing services that you pay for. How do you think about, you know what I mean, like your super customers who are making their own money in your world?
Yeah, the interface, or sorry, our focus on developing a linear story experience or whatever you're working on eventually is going to melt away to a bigger metaverse. So it'll be within the same construct where I'm creating an experience, but the people that cohabitate this world are our customers, and they're entering into our experience from there, right?
One thing I wanted to touch on, I recently kind of started a mini initiative. We're still kind of formulating it from our studio, trying to get more developers together and talk about this very thing. And one of the things that I didn't really think about, but I realized is a very big problem, is these people rely on their faces being shown, chatting with their audience, all of this thing. We have a huge obstacle with a big object in the way blocking this experience. So one of the things that I hope to, and I hope with all of us to kind of conversate about and have more conversations on, is how do we, and I actually, before I ever got into digital, came from a live stage background. I used to mount shows for casinos, variety, everything. So I come from kind of a split dual vision on this subject. And the reason why is I think it's very important for us when we have these people with fan bases and they're evangelizing for us, that we also brainstorm on how is this an entertaining experience for their viewers. Because it's one thing to be inside of it, but there's a lot going on that they rely on to keep their funds flowing in and support on their channel. So how do we make this a little bit more interesting for somebody who's not in the headset and they're blocked at the same time?
Arizona Sunshine's got to be one of the most streamed, or like for YouTubers playing and creating content with those influencers, right?
I think, you know, in that case, I think there's some unique dynamics of like, you know, being able to watch someone get, you know, freaked out because a zombie jumped in their face or something like that.
Yeah.
You know, there's a little bit of an intentional goofiness at times in the game that I think plays to some of that. You know, I think, you know, longer term there are opportunities to monetize around that as you get those communities. But what we're seeing more emphasis on in that space is how do you create more mixed reality content, or even the idea, you know, of VR streaming. So instead of, you know, looking at a 2D screen, I actually put my headset on and then I'm in the space with the influencer. And so I think that's going to be very compelling content. There's a lot of people working on that in terms of the tech side of it.
All right, well, I guess I'm going to ask the last question then, which is going to be for each of you. What are you looking forward to the most in the year ahead? VR, AR, in our field. And I will begin, where to start? I'll start right here with you, because you are right. I saw the look on your face, it means you are ready. What are you looking forward to the most in the year ahead?
Honestly, I think just improving, tracking, improving, because there's so much freedom in expression when you're in these experiences, getting to use your arms, getting to use your feet. You guys are developing some amazing, amazing things. But just having that freedom while you're in there for self-expression and tracking.
Awesome. Jenna?
I'm excited for our standalone device that we just announced. It's, you know, there's an audience for those that are, you know, tethered to a PC, but it's really going to be really amazing not to get tripped up in that cord as well.
Is there a date announced or no?
Well, the Vive Focus was available for pre-order like a day or two ago. It's only available in China right now, but whether it's ours or Oculus Go or what they've announced, I mean, I think the standalone devices will grow the ecosystem massively in the next year, and so I'm excited for everyone in that space, and so I think it's cool.
Man, I'm excited for 2018, 2019 because there's such a dense population of different hardware coming to market that's going to completely change the landscape
Yep.
of VR. And most of the people who are at this conference know that, and they see kind of where the tipping point is. So I'm genuinely excited for kind of mid-2019 and in that range. And I'm also excited about kind of the state of honesty that the industry is coming to with the challenges of where we're at and how we can fix those things, and just being realistic about what the curve is, to growth. And everybody knows it's going to be a crazy success, but being more realistic about how we get there is exciting to me.
Since he did two, I'm going to do two as well, if that's hard. The standalone devices, I think, are going to be huge in terms of increasing the install base. And then the other one for me is more, there's an LBE panel of sort of the larger warehouse scale, sort of bespoke, like you only make them just for the location-based environment. I think the growth of that in 2018 is going to be huge because it's going to bring high-quality VR to people in a different location, and again, expanding access to that. And I think it's another form of monetization as well, to create something that only lives out of home.
Fantastic. And with that, thank all of you very much for your time for this panel today. And thank all of you for sticking with us for all the 2 days of VRX. You're awesome. And I think we're all done. I think that's it. Another year complete.